Peace talks between delegations from Ukraine and Russia are underway in Turkey, with the Ukrainian side pushing for a ceasefire. It's the first meeting between the sides in 2 weeks, but hopes of a breakthrough at the negotiations in Istanbul remain low. Meanwhile, the UK Foreign Office says it's very concerned by the claim that the Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich had symptoms of a suspected poisoning after talks earlier this month to try to resolve the conflict. Mr. Abramovich has been pictured at today's talks in Turkey. Thomas Morgan reports.
A safe landing, hoping to secure a safer future. Ukrainian delegates arriving in Istanbul, gearing up for the latest round of peace talks, the first face-to-face in weeks. A ceasefire is their aim, although there's significant doubt over whether this is likely.
The minimum programme is, first of all, humanitarian questions. And the maximum programme is ceasefire and reaching a lasting agreement on it.
The last time negotiations were held, there was no compromise. But there's also another cause for concern. 3 of those involved in early discussions, which included Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich, say they suffered suspected poisoning, a potentially lethal and serious claim.
Last March, there were negotiations between Ukraine and Russia under Turkish auspices. What did Britain do? Prime Minister Boris Johnson flew to Ukraine, informed Kiev that Britain and the United States don't think this is a time for negotiations. He was followed by Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense for the United States, who presumably gave his typical message, extremely clear: we have to continue the war to severely weaken Russia. Well, the negotiations collapsed. We don't know why. Western media don't cover these things. We only know mainly from Ukrainian sources. For the Western media, like your journal, you don't cover peace possibilities, you cover war. But those are all the facts we know. Well, does that justify the criminal attack? No. Is it an act of criminal stupidity? Yes.
Face-to-face talks wrapped up for the day in Istanbul between Russia and Ukraine, the first in-person talks between the two countries in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Ukraine says its priority is a ceasefire, while Russia continues to demand Ukraine's neutrality. Meanwhile, Moscow continues its air attack on Ukraine's capital. Russia's defense ministry said it will scale back military activities around Kyiv and another city to create conditions for dialogue. CBS News' Deborah Alfarone has more.
Russia's deputy defense minister says Moscow will, quote, fundamentally cut back operations near Kyiv and another major city in Ukraine to increase mutual trust. The latest development was announced in Turkey, where negotiators from Russia and Ukraine wrapped up a day of talks aimed at ending Russia's deadly invasion. In addition to a ceasefire, Ukrainian officials are seeking guarantees for the nation's future. Russia has demanded Ukraine declare its neutrality and have no military affiliation with another country. And Ukrainian President Zelensky says he's open to that.
U.S. policy in Ukraine remains stable. The war must continue in order to severely weaken Russia. That's policy. Britain, which is a virtual satellite of the United States now, Britain and the United States actually intervened directly last March and April to urge Ukraine not to move towards negotiations. And negotiations were going on with Russia under Turkish auspices. They broke down. We don't know exactly why, but Britain and the U.S. were very clear that we're not ready for negotiations. No, still not. The official stand remains: fight the war to severely weaken Russia. If you think about it, just from a practical point of view, it's kind of sadistic, but people are in fact talking about it. It's a bargain for the United States. At a small fraction of the huge military budget, the United States is severely degrading the military forces of its main military enemy. That's being openly discussed now in the United States, and Britain pointing this out. It's pretty obvious. Whether that's a factor or not, you can debate, but it's certainly a fact. The United States, in fact, you look around, almost the entire world is suffering from this. Ukraine most, but Africa, Asia, curtailment of food and fertilizer shipments having a big effect. Europe is declining, even moving towards deindustrialization because of its the breaking of its natural trade commercial relations with Russia. The whole German-based, very successful European industrial system was based on interactions with the East. Now, Russia doesn't have much of an economy. It's about the size of Mexico, but it's very rich in resources, minerals, oil, all essential for West European industry. It's collapsing. All over the world, decline. One exception. U.S. is doing brilliantly. It's degrading the forces of its enemy at very low cost. Fossil fuel companies are just euphoric with the huge profits that come. Germany's importing liquefied natural gas from the United States at far higher costs than it could get cheaply from Russia. Arms manufacturers are doing great. Food monopolies, the global food system is half a dozen companies raising prices, profits going through the roof. It's it's very successful in many ways. How long will Europe agree to accept this? We don't know.